In this episode, you will learn about OracleBio, an image analysis contract research organization, CRO, that is good clinical practice compliant, GCP compliant. Hi, welcome to the Digital Pathology Place. I'm Alexandra Zhurav and I'm here to help you do better digital pathology. Today, my guest is Lorcan Sherry, the Chief Scientific Officer of OracleBio, and OracleBio's goal is to provide high-quality image analysis-based quantitative digital pathology services. And now they are able to do it in a GCP-compliant way, meaning that the data that they generate with image analysis can be used to support clinical trials. So have a listen, and I hope you'll enjoy it. And if you want to learn more about digital pathology, subscribe to our newsletter and take our free digital pathology crash course. I'm gonna leave the link in the description below. Today, my guest is Lorcan Sherry from OracleBio. Hi, Lorcan, how are you?
Hi, Alex. I'm fine, thanks.
So let's start with your introduction. Tell us about yourself, about your background, and how you ended up at OracleBio.
Sure. And thanks for the invitation to speak with you today. I'm delighted to be here. So my background is I'm a pharmacologist by training. I did a degree in pharmacology at the University of Edinburgh. And when I finished that degree, I was then able to start a Ph.D. at the same university in cardiovascular medicine. Mm-hmm. And that gave me some exposure and training in the areas of histology and pathology with respect to tissue processing, tissue sectioning, immunohistochemistry staining, use of microscopes to review the staining, and some image analysis techniques. So that was really my real starting point for getting involved in pathology and histology, and I really enjoyed that experience through my PhD. When I came to the end of my PhD, I felt that I wasn't really wanting to continue in academia, so I applied for a job in pharma, a local pharma R&D company, and I was lucky to get a job there working in the histology group to support preclinical cardiovascular projects. And I spent the next 10 years of my career in pharma R&D, where I managed that histology group and supported a range of different types of studies along the R&D pipeline, such as preclinical, translational projects. And I got more involved in biomarker research and also biomarker strategies to support R&D projects as they move from preclinical through to clinical. So that was a really great time for me, and I enjoyed that work. About 10 years into that, the company itself was acquired by a larger pharmaceutical company just at the end of 2010, and the company site was closed. So myself and a colleague who I'd worked with extensively through my pharma career, John Waller, John convinced me that we could diversify our careers and start a CRO in biomarker services, mm-hmm. which was an interesting concept for me at the time. I have to say, I think John was more the entrepreneur than I was in that situation, but I thought, yeah, this sounds good. Let's try this, and from that, OracleBio started just at the beginning of 2011.
Okay, wow. Huh. And CRO for image analysis, this is a pretty unique value proposition. I don't think there's any, I mean, some companies provide services, but a CRO that is strictly for image analysis is something different. And tell me about this value proposition. Like, how did you come up with that idea?
Yes, well, I'd like to say we were visionaries in the field, but at the time, around 2011, when we started the company.
Oh, in 2011, you definitely were.
It was more a necessity. We started with the mindset that we would work in the area of biomarker research. We really felt at the time translational biomarkers were having a big impact in the R&D pipeline from preclinical through to clinical studies, and making, building the confidence level of data that went from preclinical studies through to clinic with more success. So we certainly wanted to do something in that biomarker field. When we sort of sat down and really thought about it, that's a big area. So we really needed to focus on one particular part of that process. And I think our backgrounds of histology, image analysis, working in pharma R&D led us to a decision that, pathology and image analysis was an area we wanted to focus on. And that's really the reason that we started. It was really based on our background and our skill sets that we had at the time. And it was quite interesting when I think back about, what image analysis was back then. Whole slide scanning was just starting to come into play. So I wouldn't say that image analysis was one-dimensional at the time, but it was certainly handcuffed to working with fields of view down microscopes and maybe working on single chromogenic staining. And it certainly had a purpose, and a lot of people were doing this. Histology was around for a while, but image analysis really didn't have a chance to express itself. And I think that really has happened over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And the early years for us, it was, the advancement of moving from microscope field of view images to whole slide images was a big step forward. Now we were able to generate data from whole sections as opposed to, subjective field of views or smaller regions. And that was a sort of a transformational stage. At the same time, histology was progressing very rapidly. It was moving from chromogenic staining to multiplex staining, to in situ hybridization techniques, fluorescence staining going from 2-plex to 4-plex to 6-plex to 8-plex. All this was advancing, and this was again allowing image analysis to express itself better with these more complex staining techniques and images that we were receiving. And then, of course, the company, as a company, we've worked across all of the R&D pipeline and across all therapeutic areas, but oncology and cancer tissues were a principal part of the samples we were receiving, a majority of the work that we were receiving. And when immunotherapy and immuno-oncology came on the scene around 2013, 2014, this was a real drive in the R&D field. And immuno-oncology really led itself to allowing digital pathology to add real value to that area, because immuno-oncology involved different cell populations in tumor tissue. It involved the immune cells, and clients were now wanting to know about the phenotyping of those immune cells. Where, are they in the tumor? Are they in the stroma? What other cells are around them, such as macrophages, dendritic cells, NK cells? What's the spatial relationship of these cells in the tissue? And this really allowed image analysis and digital pathology to help answer those questions. And I feel we really got a huge lift from a lot of things coming together around that time, that sort of, and that progress has actually continued right up to today with the advent of things like artificial intelligence, image mass cytometry techniques, where clients are seeing that there's an advancement in the techniques and the quality of the images, and they're now able to get much more data from their samples than we would have got 5 or 10 years ago when we started. So I think when we started, we were in this area of, we are helping, but it was single chromogenic, answering quite straightforward questions, but now we're able to answer much more complex questions, and that's been a really interesting and a really rewarding sort of part of being on this journey with the company.
So it's 10 years since 2011, and definitely now, like you say, immuno-oncology kind of requires image analysis. You cannot do it manually or visually. You can try, but it's never gonna have the level of consistency, the level of granularity. So
absolutely, and you know, we've seen you know, because we've seen some of the histology techniques advancing, they are now being applied to other therapeutic areas. We do a lot of work in inflammation and fibrosis. We do a lot of work in dermatology, and we are now thinking about maximizing the data that we can extract from images. You know, and we learned a lot from immuno-oncology and immunotherapy and the approaches and the cell types and how to stain them and segment these cells. So I think, you know, we're now being able to apply that learning to other therapeutic areas to the advantage of generating more data to support better interpretations of those samples.
Mm-hmm. So you're a CRO, so you are using tools of different companies. And this is something that interests me a lot. You're using image analysis software from wherever you think is going to suit best your needs. How do you choose this software? And the second part of this question is, why did you go this route? There are so many companies that decide to do software, and then they also provide services. You decided you're not going to do software, you're going to just do image analysis and use what's out there. Tell me about your vetting process of software.
Well, if I can tell you a little bit about how OracleBio works, because it then sort of maybe it helps understand why we've taken the approach. So principally, OracleBio provides digital pathology services to support pharma and biotech R&D. So essentially, we receive images from our clients' histology studies, or we receive their slides and we scan those to images. And then we use commercially available software to generate algorithms tailored to the studies to quantify the staining on those samples. And we generate data from the algorithms, from the images, and return that data to our clients to allow them to better interpret the outcome of their studies. Because of our background, we really tried to think about how we could use the skill sets and experiences that we had in the best possible way to support our clients. We didn't come from a programming background or an IT background, so we didn't have that type of internal capabilities when we started the company. And at the time, there was some great softwares on the market. And actually, our first software that we worked with was Definiens. I think we spoke to Definiens in early 2011 and managed to convince them that, you know, it would be a good business model to have CROs using their software as well as them selling it directly to clients. And by having a software that was powerful like that, and was on a maintenance contract, we didn't have to worry about updating it. It allowed us to focus on our skills of which is really partly a consultancy service that we do for our clients. Yes, we receive their images. We use our expertise in image analysis to generate the data. But our clients are quite different. You know, we work with small biotechs right through to large pharma. And some of our small biotech clients will not necessarily have internal histology expertise, and they may only do 4 or 5, 6 studies a year, but they need quality data from those samples. So in that instance, we would speak to our clients and we would say, well, what is the question you're trying to answer from your samples? And then we can suggest or recommend a histology approach or staining required to best deliver that data. So we work with our clients at that level, even before they've generated the images in some instances. And our clients may say to us, okay, well, that's great. Can you help with the histology? So we actually have a network of about 6 histology companies that we partner with in Europe. And for quite a number of studies, we manage the process for some of our smaller biotechs from tissue to data. We partner with histology CROs, tissue companies, And we also recently have worked with bioinformatics companies, brought bioinformatics companies into our partnership to be able to deal with the data at the back end and run bioinformatics, all under a contract that we manage. So that in itself was a business model that we felt didn't necessarily need to have our own IP with respect to the software. The other component of that is what we found. Although we started with the Definian software and we were very much on that software as a company, a single platform, and it was a great software. We found that, you know, especially our larger pharma clients, you know, those companies don't just use one software for all of their image analysis needs. They will use a different range of softwares, you know, and there's a lot of different software, a lot of great softwares out there. So we were going into companies and we were finding that they had different softwares that they were using. And a client may actually want us to use a software that they're using internally. So it became important for us to be able to broaden the types of softwares that we were using to align with what they're using internally and to be able to return the data in a way that they could manage, or they could send us some algorithms from their internal group and we would run them and then pass the data back. And so that was a flexibility that being software agnostic allowed us to have. And I think that's probably served us well as we've moved forward, because you talked about how do we choose the software for a particular study.
And what software are you using, if you can say that?
Yes, well, actually, for the first 4 years, we were with Definian's, and then that finished. And Definian's business model changed, as we now know. And we then acquired software from Indica Labs' Halo platform. And then after that, we also acquired Visiopharm's software. So at the moment, we principally run 2 software packages, and they are probably the 2 most well-known and most used softwares in pharma R&D, which is Indica Labs, Halo, and Visiopharm. But, you know, the model does allow us to look at other softwares moving forward, you know, and there's other softwares like QPath out there. And
that's what I wanted to ask you about, if you incorporate this in any way.
Yeah, and that's something that we are looking to do as we move forward, because that's a software that's becoming much more used by a lot of our clients. And things like MATLAB and programming capabilities as well. And I think when we have that wider menu board of softwares to work with, then it makes us more flexible in how we can work with clients, but also thinking about which software solution best suits the study that we're working on. You know, and every software has its strengths and weaknesses. I don't particularly want to go into them right now, but certainly
everybody who starts using is going to learn on their own.
But certainly for studies, you know, we will first have a conversation with the client, understand the needs of their study, understand the data readouts that they want to generate that are important, and then we think about which software is best suited from the softwares that we're using to allow us to generate that data. So again, that flexibility is important for us as a company.
Tell me about a failure that set you up for success. Did you have anything that, you know, you thought it was a disaster, but then later you came out stronger on the other end?
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't think we've had any sort of catastrophic failures in the company that we've had to pick ourselves up right from the ground and start again. But I guess in the early years we were using a software from Definian's that we leased from Definian's on an annual basis, and it was a very powerful software, and it really allowed us to do image analysis well on the samples we were receiving. But after about 4 years, we weren't able to continue that lease period. Definian's were changed their business model and politely told us that, you know, they would not want to continue. and at the time, this was our principal software, and we were like, okay, this is not good. You know, how do we get out of this? And luckily, at the time, Indica Labs had started up maybe a year or 2 before, and they were making some really nice progress with Halo. And we spoke to them, and we were able to acquire a large number of licenses of Halo that we owned, and that actually dovetailed very nicely with the sort of the winding down of the Definiens lease period, and from that, you know, we learned a lesson that maybe that we shouldn't just be a single software company. I think flexibility with respect to just business continuity is good, and from that we purchased Visiofarm software a year or so later and built up that platform in the company, and we are you know open and active in exploring other opportunities to bring in other softwares that allow us to widen that sort of menu of platforms, and I think that was, you know, at the time we probably saw it as a failure that we couldn't convince Definiens to continue with us. But looking back, you know, there was other things. I don't think it was just about us. I think there was a business model that Definiens were pursuing that didn't necessarily, you know, allow them to do what, you know, to lease software to CROs. But it certainly, it was one step backwards, but two steps forwards. I think, you know, if we look where we are now, and Definiens is no longer on the market, and we have two very powerful softwares, and we have flexibility to bring on more. That's been something I think has been a real benefit for us.
Now the market is also a little bit more full of digital image analysis software. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I really enjoyed it.